After getting our 4th win in a row versus Brighton and Hove Albion last time out, Chelsea move on to our final game of the season, against another southern side, Bournemouth, at home at Stamford Bridge. Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome to the lead-in. Let's set the scene here. It's Chelsea versus Bournemouth, 6th in the Premier League versus 11th. After getting another 3 points and Newcastle losing to Manchester United last time out, we have leapfrogged the Magpies and will be looking to do the same to Spurs if they somehow lose to Sheffield United. We can end the season with 5 wins in 5 with all 3 points here, which would be a fantastic end to a rather dismal season overall. We'll have to beat Bournemouth in order to do that, a team that has been completely transformed under their new manager, playing much better football and getting that coveted 40 points already. They have 2 wins in 5 matches, which isn't that bad considering they've had to face Arsenal and Villa in 2 of those games. They are coming off of the back of a 2-1 loss to Brentford, and though they don't have anything to play for but pride, they'll be looking to bounce back against us and finish on a high. So let's take a brief look at the Bournemouth team and see what they could be bringing to the table. Firstly, let's talk absentees. The Cherries have not many injury concerns. The only players that are confirmed to be out are Ryan Fredericks and Luis Sinisterra, who have calf and hamstring issues respectively, but there are doubts over whether Chris Mepham or Romain Favre will play any part. I'll be putting Andoni Iraola's side into that classic 4-2-3-1 formation he uses for this fixture, with the team largely staying the same as it was versus Brentford. First up in goal though is going to be their number 1, Brazilian Neto Moreira. I don't think that Travis is going to get another appearance here to be honest, and I expect the more experienced shot stopper to start. The defence is going to be changed from the back 4 that started last time out, but starting with the right back, I'd be surprised if Adam Smith doesn't start here. The centre-back partnership will be a familiar pairing of Ilya Zabarny on the right and Marcos Senesi on the left. Finally, over on the left there will be a change in my opinion. Back from his 3-match suspension will be Hungarian Milos Kerkez to replace Lloyd Kelly. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with the deeper roles. This will stay the same as the last match, with Scott Ryan Christie lining up in this new position of his alongside long-term Cherry Lewis Cook. Ahead of them in the attacking roles, I don't expect any changes here considering how well they played versus Brentford, so on the right will remain Antoine Semenyo, in the centre will be Justin Kluivert, and finally over on the left will be Dango Ouattara. That leaves the one man up top, and this is pretty obvious considering his form. Ex-Chelsea man Dominic Solanke starts once more after he was denied a hat-trick in the last game. As I said, just a brief overview of what I expect their team to look like. Other than a few tweaks due to injury, I don't expect much rotation. Now let's quickly take a look at how Chelsea could line up. We only have 6 first team injuries now, so have a much larger squad to choose from, so this will likely be one of our stronger lineups of the season. I think that we'll continue to use this 4-2-3-1 that changes into a 3-2-5 like we saw last time out, and as ever I'll be showing what I expect from Poch, then suggest changes that I personally would like to see. Starting with the goalkeeper, I'm going to be putting in Georgia Petrovic once again. He wasn't really tested versus Brighton, and since Sanchez is still out injured, there's no way he doesn't play. For the back 4, this is going to be very similar to as it was last time out, so starting at right back, with Reece James suspended for this game, it's going to be Malo Gusto once again. The centre-back pairing is one we will unfortunately never see again, with Chelsea legend Thiago Silva playing his final game for the club, alongside Trevor Chalobah. I would expect Silva to be captain for this game to commemorate his service to the club, and wish him well on his future endeavours. The left-back is going to be our new Spanish revelation, El Come Paella, El Bebe Estrella, of course it's Marc Cucurella. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with holding roles. Once again, this isn't changing in the slightest with the form that these two have been in, so lining up together is Conor Gallagher and Moises Caicedo in the middle. Ahead of them in the attacking midfield roles, there'll be slight tweaks here. Over on the right hand side, I reckon Noni Madueke gets another run out as he was decent in the Brighton game. In the centre, it's of course going to be our player of the season, and now officially the Premier League's young player of the season too, Cole Jermaine Palmer. Finally, on the left hand side, with Misha Mudryk unable to play due to concussion protocol, thanks Lamptey, I finally get to say that Christopher Nkunku starts for Chelsea. After his goal last time out, I'd expect him to be in great confidence. Let's hope he gets a decent chunk of minutes. I don't expect him to play the full 90 so soon after his injury. Up top will once again be Nicholas Jackson, who I think we can all agree has been a great signing overall for us this season. Hopefully he can sharpen up in the final third in this one and bag a goal or two. This is what I'm expecting, but what would I personally change? Well, I genuinely think that this is our strongest lineup we can field. I wouldn't change basically anything, but I'll point out places where there could be rotation. Let's start with the back line. Once again, Levi Colwill was nowhere to be found in the Brighton game, so perhaps he gets some minutes off of the bench. The same could be said for Axel Disasi. I'd expect Thiago Silva to be substituted in this game so he can receive a large round of applause in his final game, so perhaps either one of those could come on for him, or Benoit Badiashile, who is the most likely in my opinion. Moving into midfield, I don't expect changes here, but we did see Leslie Ugochukwu and Cesare Casade come on for apps off the bench like I expected, so perhaps we see the same thing in this game too. Carney Chukwuemeka is back in team training, but I think it's too soon for him to return to action, unfortunately. As for the attack, the only player I expect to see come on is Raheem Sterling, who could very well be playing his final game for the club too if he's to be sold this summer, so if that is the case, thanks for your service Raz, good luck wherever you end up. Apart from that, I think this is the strongest team we can/will field based on current form, and once again, unfortunately, I don't anticipate any youth involvement for this game with basically our entire bench back. So, those are my lineups, and I'd like to hear from you guys too, so for today's question of the day, answer me this. A bit of market research here, but what type of content would you like to see on this channel for the off/pre-season? Let me know in the comments down below with QOTD at the start as always, and I'll heart my favourite answers, as well as likely do some of them. Now let's analyse the previous performance from Chelsea and see what we can do to beat Bournemouth in this one. Okay, so first I'm going to talk a little bit about our setup to start with, because it's evolved a little over the course of the 4 games that we've played it, and though I will be talking about the previous game a bit here, I am going to be using the lineup from this video, just for these examples. That 4-2-3-1 almost always changes into a 3-2-5 or a 3-2-2-3 in possession, with Marc Cucurella usually being the player to step into the midfield and supplement the middle. But in the last game versus Brighton, we saw something interesting happening during the game, and it's something that's been the topic of conversation for a few weeks now. It concerns Malo Gusto, or Reece James when he plays here. A big question that's been asked recently is what happens when we try to play this 3-2-5 system with both our fullbacks being, well, fullbacks. Usually we'd have an extra centre-back, usually Trevor Chalobah, in the team that would allow us to set up this way, but what happens when we don't have 3 centre-backs in the back line? Well, we got our answer against the Seagulls, and it's a pretty simple one. Malo Gusto just plays like a right centre-back. Or does he? Well, yes and no. When building up from the back, our default setup starts with Gusto in that right centre-back spot, with Cucurella tucked in, but depending on what side we're attacking, the entire team shifts around. When the ball is being played down the right-hand side, Gusto plays like a normal right-back, pushing higher up the pitch. When he does this, Cucurella drops into this left centre-back role of sorts, with Chalobah coming over, and Silva coming over, and him being here, with Gallagher dropping into the midfield, and obviously Palmer coming into the central role a bit more. When the ball is being played down the left-hand side, it's slightly different. Cucurella will still play in the central role, but sometimes he'll play in the left centre-back role, with Caicedo coming a bit more central, Gusto going into this right centre-mid role, with Gallagher on the left-hand side and a left centre mid role, and then obviously Chalobah and Silva shifting across, and the ball will be played this way instead, and then we'll try and go through this way. We even see Gallagher sometimes dropping deep into a left back role of sorts, almost over here, when Cucurella wants to go further up the pitch when we are building out from the back. Sometimes we see Caicedo dropping into this right centre-back role, so Gusto can come into this right centre-mid role when Cucurella goes to left-back, and Gallagher drops deeper a little bit, so we can play up the pitch that way. The team is so fluid, and there's so many different setups in the defence and midfield that it's hard for our opponents to keep a track of our players. And once we get past the midfield or forward press, we start attacking more normally. When we are further up the pitch, we leave both of our centre-backs back and commit both of our full-backs high up the pitch into these advanced areas to try and create 2v1s. Whether that be with Gusto and Madueke on the right-hand side up against the full-back, or Cucurella and Gallagher with the winger, whoever's here. This is usually Mudryk, but in this case it's Nkunku. The reason why I say Cucurella or Gallagher is because obviously Cucurella does like to come into this position inside, and sometimes it's Gallagher that makes the overlap or the underlapping runs. And we saw this work perfectly against Brighton. Both of our goals came from our fullbacks, either over or underlapping high up the pitch. The first from Cucurella getting high up on the left-hand side, and then putting in a ball for Palmer, who got the all-important header into the far corner. And our second goal actually comes from the same thing on the opposite side, with Malo Gusto being able to get into this advanced area and then put the ball across for Christopher Nkunku to tap in. I want to talk about the way that we play out from pressure a bit here, as it was a major reason we found success versus Brighton, and I suspect it will be a major factor in this game versus Bournemouth too. This is our team against a standard high press 4-2-3-1 side. When we look at this situation, it seems quite tricky to get out of, but once again this new system provides us with a numerical advantage that makes it easier to build out from the back. It seems like we are in a 3v3 here, right? Both options for a pass are cut off by the opposing players. Well, that's if you forget to count Georgi Petrovic in goal. The goalkeeper is exceptionally important in the modern game to pass your way out from those scenarios, and him stepping out allows us to make this into a 4v3 and have a spare man in this scenario. Usually he will actually step out into the 3 with the fullback coming out here, and now obviously in this scenario Gusto is the spare man, and that's basically what we're trying to create when we're passing it backwards and forwards between the centre backs and the goalkeeper, is we're trying to create that spare man. And then obviously when the opportunity for a risky ball to be played to Gusto, say this goes out to Chalobah, he can try and get this into Gusto now. This allows us to play out from that massive pressure and then turn and drive into the space. Obviously it won't always be that easy, so a lot of the time we actually look to the midfield to create that man advantage. Obviously in this midfield, I've spoken about this before, in this box midfield that we create, we have a 4v3 advantage here too, and this is really important because a lot of the time this is where the passes kind of end up going. It's mainly into Caicedo. He's usually the one that drops, say if Petrovic is on the ball, he's the one that drops and will be the one to receive the pass. Obviously, he's not going to be unchallenged here, so one of the players will come with him, whether that be the central attacking midfielder or one of the deeper midfielders. But what this always does is, because they have a 3v4 here, whoever goes up to challenge him, regardless of whether it's this deeper player or this cam, there's always going to be another spare man. In this case, it would be Cucurella, and in this case, if the cam is marking Cucurella and this player steps up, now Palmer is the spare man. So we can always play it to Gusto and then to Palmer, and we've got that space to turn around and go forward. And this is basically how we played against Brighton. We just kept getting this spare man, and usually Caicedo is actually really good at playing out under the pressure anyway, so if he gets pressed, he'll be the one who will just turn around and kind of drive forward through the midfield, which is what he's been able to do a lot more recently, is actually show off his ball carrying, because he hasn't been able to do that very effectively this season yet. And once he does this, obviously, and we've got this these 4 players committed up the pitch high to try and press us, we have this man advantage here too, and we can obviously progress up the pitch and then use that man advantage to usually play it wide or play it through Palmer to go through the centre. That ability to navigate an intense forward press and then gain a numerical advantage high up the pitch will benefit us against this weekend's opponents, as Bournemouth play in a similar way to Brighton with their aggressive pressure and attacking football. They step on the front foot at basically any and all opportunities to try and nick the ball and create transitions, and though this works versus many teams, we've shown that in this new system we are able to easily pass our way out of dangerous areas, with Caicedo often being the recipient of a pass and then turning his way out of danger and then progressing us up the pitch for our own attacks. Iraola's side love to attack with their own fullbacks getting high too. Milos Kerkez especially enjoys getting high up the pitch and joining the attack and providing the width for the team. And in general, Bournemouth play very wide. They like to stretch the play, they like to play the ball out into these wide areas and then either cross the ball into Solanke, who's been in terrific form all season, has been in probably his best ever season in the Premier League, or cut inside and get shots off on goal from outside the box. And they like doing this especially on the counter-attack when there's less players back too. They are very dangerous in these scenarios when they do win the ball in midfield and play it up the pitch to the wide areas, and then they have these 1v1s versus whoever's out here. If it's a fullback or Silva, they'll try and drive around and then get the balls across, or as I said, go inside and try and get shots in. They are very dangerous from these scenarios, and though that is where their main strength lies, I don't think they'll be able to create these transitions as often against us, just because of the way that our system works and how we've been so good at defending these scenarios in recent times. What we haven't really been good at defending though, however, is balls from these wide areas into the box, especially high balls. They do have, as I mentioned before, a very powerful centre forward in Dominic Solanke, who will bully our defenders, and we haven't been very good at defending these situations all season, whether that's from set plays or from open play. but that has steadily improved recently, and the addition of Trevor Chalobah especially, who has been excellent since returning to the side, has benefited us in the air for those scenarios. It's worth mentioning that Bournemouth have also had more days to prepare for this game than we have, with their last game being last Saturday and ours being Wednesday. Those extra days of rest could be vital for them. Having an advantage in their intensity and their pressing could cause us more trouble. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, they don't really have anything to play for other than a top half finish. I suppose we'll just have to find out who wants it more in the match tomorrow. For a score prediction, I'm going to be predicting that 5th Chelsea win in a row. I think that we've really started firing using this system, and I'm going to predict another final day hammering. I'm going to go for a 4-0 victory, which may admittedly be underestimating Bournemouth a bit. I think our goal scorers are going to be Nkunku with a curler to the far corner, Jackson with a header, Palmer from the penalty spot, and poetically Thiago Silva, who will score one of his typical near post flick headers. We'll have to wait until the game to see if any of my predictions are correct, and as always, I'll be live streaming after the game to give my first reactions. But if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these 2 videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues!